Yeah, so by responsible open science, I refer to the practice of respecting ethics and integrity standards in doing open science. So before I go through the 3 points that I want to go through, I just want to make sure that we all understand academic freedom in the same way. And here I wish to use the Lima Declaration. So there are 3 aspects of academic freedom. The first aspect is academic freedom refers to freedom of whom? Freedom of members of the academic community. And freedom of what? Freedom in the pursuit, development, and transmission of knowledge through which manner? Through research, study, discussion, documentation, production, creation, teaching, lecturing, and writing. Now, note, however, that the European Union is yet to have an official definition of academic freedom. And we will go back to this point at the end of this presentation. So first part of the presentation, that ethics and integrity have foundational roles in academic freedom. I will demonstrate this simply by going through 2 statements from 2 very relevant and very important documents. The first is the Rome Ministerial Communique by EHEA, the European Higher Education Area. And it says the following: academic freedom must be framed by rigorous scientific professional standards, respect for the rights of others, ethical conduct, and awareness of the impact of research on humans and their environment. So if we look into this communication, we see that that academic freedom must be framed, must be understood within the confines of respect for the rights of others, ethical conduct, and awareness of impact of research on humans and their environment. The second one is a very recent STOA publication entitled State of Play of Academic Freedom in the EU Member States, which state the following: when it comes to the purpose of limitations of academic freedom, we can identify first limitations justified internally, that is, they are justified by the academic activity's own purpose and own basic norms. That is, including research integrity. So if we look into this very short quotation here, we see that academic freedom is limited by its own internal norm. Internal norm, of course, dictated by academic activity. And part of this internal norm is what we call research integrity. All right. Now, the second point, that in an open science environment, open science instruments and practices permeate, the word that I want to stress is permeate the elements of academic freedom. So before I even go to that main point, I just want to stress the fact that, that the EU is pushing for standardization, or shall we say, making open science the standard method of working within its research and innovation funding programs. This is a direct quote from the European Commission webpage, which states that open science is a policy priority for the Commission and the standard method of working under its research and innovation funding programs. And it tells us why. These are just examples of the many, shall we say, initiatives from the Commission and from the EU in general on open science, which are reflective of the different elements of open science from UNESCO. I will not go through them because I think we have done so a lot already in the previous session. But I want to point this out, and I think this is an important part. Here we see the elements of academic freedom. If you look into, this is also coming from a recent STOA publication. If you look into the orange part of that circle, these would be what they call the essential elements of academic freedom, while the blue ones represent the subordinated or supporting elements of academic freedom. And I want to simply state that the orange section, that in an open science environment, and we know that we are all part of it already, that in an open science environment, open science tools, but more importantly, open science practices permeate each and every single bit of that orange part of that circle. So it's not only that we need to use, for example, open science infrastructures when we teach. Think of all the open platforms when we teach now. But it's not only the use of such platforms. It's also who we teach to, who our students are. In traditional science, we teach, and this is our classroom, and these are our students. But in an open science environment, our students become the world, right? And but also this openness is permeated also in how we do research. So we talked a little about how methodologies are affected by open science practices. So for example, now we have not only open access, but also open data. And of course, that comes along with a lot of problems, which we somehow touched on in the previous session. But this also means that as a researcher, we need to think of like even before we start our project, how we will open our data and which part of our data can be open, considering, of course, the risks of re-identification. That's one. But also, now we're encouraged to open what we mean by knowledge, opening up in terms of epistemic justice, opening ourselves on what knowledge means, opening ourselves to other knowledge systems, but also including society in the process, not only telling them about our results, but including them in the process through, for example, citizen science. So before we saw society as participants to our research, but now they are researchers along with us. And that is how, so in an open science environment, which we all are already in different degrees, open science permeates the different elements of academic freedom that we see over there. All right, and with that, I would end with some proposals, very few proposals. First proposal is that open science, we need to acknowledge that open science redefines what is meant by teaching, research, and the learning community. Before, a learning community will be my students. Now it's the world. When we talk about academic freedom, who are we really talking about? And that must be put out in the open, right? The permeating role of responsible open science in academic freedom requires explicit recognition. We saw a while ago how in ethics and integrity are internal regulators to academic freedom, to academic practice. Considering that open science permeates each and every single element of this practice, we need to also acknowledge that responsible open science, that is, the ethics and integrity governing open science, we need to acknowledge that that is something that is an important element when we talk about academic freedom. Third, responsible open science should be integral to the development of a cohesive European definition of academic freedom. And I think this is an important agenda that I put here because there's still no European definition of academic freedom, no official definition at least. We also propose that responsible open science must be acknowledged as fundamental in the governance of academic freedom. So there is a very big effort coming from the STOA, coming from the European Parliament, in terms of discussing and opening up, questioning how academic freedom must be governed. And I think this, not including responsible open science in such discussions, is a mistake. And at the very end, at most, I think it's a naive move, right? Second to the last, incorporating responsible open science into both formal and informal monitoring mechanisms is vital for safeguarding academic freedom. We can never leave open science simply latent when we talk of academic freedom, and thus when we talk about monitoring, whether de jure or de facto. Responsible open science must be in the picture when we talk about monitoring academic freedom. Last but not the least, and here I wish to propose that the ROSiE guidelines on responsible open science be considered as one of the benchmarks or a framework for what it means to have responsible open science. With that, I would want to end with this, in case you're interested in what ROSiE has to offer. Thank you very much.